Welcome to this APWA Accreditation course. Our topic today is understanding policies and procedures as related to the self-assessment process and becoming a nationally accredited agency. In order to understand why policies and procedures are so important, we need to know what they are and the differences between them. Often we come to work and function on autopilot, going about our day without giving any thought to why and how something is done. But what if your agency didn't have any policies or procedures? Unheard of, right? Actually, it's not. I did a self-assessment workshop where multiple agencies were in attendance, all wanting to learn how to get started in preparing to become accredited. In asking the participants why their agency wanted to become an accredited agency, responses included, "My director wants us to do this," "The neighboring city is accredited," or "We need to do a better job training our employees." All of these are valid reasons, and I appreciate the candor. There was one response, though, that stood out. A local city public works and transportation department was a brand new agency. In the previous months, the city had gone through a reorganization. Now, we all at some point in our career have experienced the trials and tribulations of a reorganization. You know the transition of adding or losing a department can be confusing. For this particular city, there had not been a public works or a transportation department prior to the reorg. That meant they had no policies or procedures, no identified responsibilities, and no succession planning. Basically, a clean slate. Now, for agencies that have existing policies and procedures, you might think that this is not a bad thing, and you're right, to an extent. For the city, added to the formula was the hiring of a new department director. The staff of this newly created Public Works and Transportation Department decided that the Public Works Management Practices Manual, combined with the self-assessment process, these were ideal for establishing their policies and procedures. Working with other departments, they used the manual as a guide and were able to create a complete operations manual. This manual is now being used to guide staff in determining responsibilities and identify missing training elements. Without the development of policies and procedures, this particular Public Works and Transportation Department may have been able to function in a standard manner, but with these processes now documented, they are able to function in an efficient and fiscally responsible manner, providing outstanding customer service to the community. If your agency has decided to work through the self-assessment process to achieve accreditation status, then understanding policies and procedures will be key to your success. The focus on the self-assessment process surrounds policies and procedures, both existing and new. This review will provide a better understanding of the difference between a policy and a procedure, why it is important for an organization and agency of any size to have these documented, and the critical role policies and procedures play in the day-to-day operations of our public works professionals. How to write those effective policies and procedures, leading to reviewing and updating in the future, will also be covered. Let's talk about the definitions of policies and procedures. A policy is a predetermined course of action. It is established to serve as a guide toward accepted organization strategies and objectives. In other words, it is a direct link between your organization's vision and the day-to-day operations. This is accomplished by providing staff with limits and the choice of alternatives that can be used to guide their decision-making process as they attempt to overcome problems. Policies will identify the rule, standard, guideline, or objectives. For a procedure, the goal of every procedure is to provide staff with a clear and easily understood plan of action to carry out or implement a policy. A well-written procedure will also help eliminate common misunderstandings by identifying job responsibilities and establishing the boundaries for everyone involved. Good procedures allow managers to control events in advance and prevent the agency and employees from making costly mistakes. Consider a procedure as a type of roadmap that keeps you on the right path and keeps you from getting lost or wandering off an acceptable path. Not all procedures will follow a policy. A procedure may be known as a workflow, steps, or instruction. No matter what name referred to, it should align with your agency and organization's strategic vision. Well-written policies and procedures allow employees to clearly understand their roles and responsibilities within predefined limits. Basically, policies and procedures allow management to guide operations without the constant worry of intervention. Why are policies and procedures needed? They are vital to every organization and agency. The purpose of policies and procedures isn't about establishing the best practice. These documents are meant to explain what management wishes to happen and how it happens. A policy is a direct link between an organization's vision and day-to-day operations. An effective policy should outline what employees must do or not do, directions, limits, principles, and guidance for decision making. Policies answer questions like what and why. The procedure is a series of routine steps to accomplish an action. Well-written procedures eliminate misunderstanding by identifying job responsibilities and establishing boundaries for job holders. A procedure is the counterpart to a policy. It is the instruction on how a policy is followed. Procedures should answer questions like when, how, and where. Understanding there is a difference between policies and procedures will make reviewing the existing and developing the new that much easier for everyone involved. It is a matter of providing consistency and iteration. Policies are meant to remain static. They are mission-oriented rules or terms that often describe the what and the why. Policies are established to identify your rules and provide clarity as to why they exist. In order to make sound decisions, knowing when and to whom the rule applies is helpful to both leadership and staff. Every action has its consequences. Being clear on those consequences can help avoid bad decisions or mistakes. When developing new policies, remember this: it's not necessary to write a book. Be direct, be to the point, as this will avoid the potential of misunderstanding the rule. A policy is necessary when the workplace policies establish boundaries, guidelines, and best practices for acceptable behavior within your agency. The purpose of policies such as these is they allow you to communicate to your employees the way you expect them to behave on the job. Your company policy goes hand in hand with your mission statement, your vision statement, and sets the tone for the type of reputation you want to establish for your agency. However, you can't implement an effective company policy without knowing what type of culture you want at the workplace, because company policy also instills the norms and values to your employees. Understanding some of the specific goals of a workplace policy can help you set the right tone for your agency. Most workplace policies and procedures are communicated to employees through a company handbook or policy manual. Typically provided to new hires during orientation, the manual covers policies and procedures related to categories such as proper dress, professional etiquette, and performance standards. The manual also usually addresses specific policies and procedures that are unique to your organization. For example, when handling customer service calls, your policy manual could cover the kinds of words you are permitted, encouraged, and prohibited from using on these calls. Some organizations maintain an intranet or other modes of internal communication to update employees on new policies or changes between handbook printings. It is your responsibility to ensure every new hire is given a policy manual and understands the regulations within that manual. Many guidelines related to safety may require an employee signature so that you have some coverage if an employee violates these standards in the future. Another purpose of policies is to create some level of uniformity in employee rights and responsibilities. Without a clear policy direction, employees tend to have different personal standards that can lead to conflict. For example, some employees might opt to wear a suit and tie in an office setting, while others are more comfortable in jeans and t-shirt. If consistency in this area is important, you should address this with a policy. Policies can also prevent internal conflict in these situations where employee discretion leads to different interpretations of proper conduct. A workplace policy can also help you recognize what decisions and actions produce the best results for your agency. Some policies simply direct employees to act in line with what best benefits their department or organization. Many organizations, for example, establish policies for dress, etiquette, communication with residents and vendors, and other behavioral topics. Proper adherence to these guidelines can result in an increased level of success and satisfaction. Safety is another important purpose of policies in the workplace. You should include policies that address legal and ethical safety for the organization, as well as personal safety for employees. By stating expectations for legal and ethical behavior, you dissuade employees from behaving in ways that would violate the standards you have established. Personal safety is critical in plants or warehouses where dangerous equipment and manual labor are common. Strong policies and procedures related to worker safety help prevent injuries and minimize your organization's exposure to lawsuits. Despite your best intentions, you can go overboard with workplace policies if they infringe on employee rights and lead to low morale. Only policies that have a purpose have value. Policies which are too restrictive can inhibit creative thinking, anger employees, and lead to a decrease in productivity. By ensuring that your policies are fair, you can prevent this type of negative result, which can harm your organization's long-term success. City, state, and federal codes, legislation, and statutes are accepted in lieu of an actual policy. These are often overlooked, resulting in the agency developing a policy which basically addresses the same content as in the code. If you follow the code as your policy, you may provide a copy of the code by including the hyperlink to the specific section which pertains to the practice. You may also attach the document or provide it in a hard copy during the site visit review. Writing any procedure should be performed as if you were explaining the task to someone who is learning the process from the ground up. It is a step-by-step guide to help staff through a task. You, as the expert, the teacher, the supervisor, need to determine how detailed the procedure should be. Taking the time to document each step of the procedure will help staff to know when to perform certain responsibilities. This also provides staff with a sense of ownership and satisfaction in knowing they are performing the work as required. Include any warnings or cautions in your procedures. Let others learn from previous mistakes made. This effort can help ensure work is performed in a timely manner, on budget, and with no injuries. If your procedure is on how to report an incident or damage to a vehicle, including a filled out form as an example can ensure your employees will provide all the necessary information. Anytime you have an opportunity to provide an example, be sure it is a good example with no errors. There is no set style or layout for creating a procedure. The most common template and easiest to understand multiple steps is by using an outline form or bullet points. This helps the reader follow all steps without being confused as to the order to do the work in. Ask yourself, how would you use your agency's SOP manual? If you're not aware of what SOP stands for, it is known as the Standard Operating Procedure. Do you know where the manual is kept? Is it only in an electronic form, or do you also have it available in hard copy for staff to access? My personal experience with realizing the value in having a completed SOP manual may give you pause to rethink the answers to those questions. In 2004, my community took a direct hit from a Category 4 hurricane. With winds sustaining over 120 miles per hour, the damage to the city was devastating. Buildings and infrastructure, along with vehicles and equipment, were either damaged or destroyed. Employees were not able to return to work, some for a few hours, some for days. First responders and Tier 1 employees were tasked with taking on responsibilities normally performed by others and often without supervision. With the use of the SOP manual as a reference and guide and the knowledge from cross-training performed on an annual basis, work continued both for the recovery operation and many of the day-to-day operations. Payroll was made, incident reports were completed and submitted, supplies were requisitioned for purchase. You might wonder, what was the challenge? The challenge came from there was no electricity, no phones, and at times no water. Add to that the shock of dealing with the aftermath of a hurricane, and you have the makings of a possible panic and all-around shutdown. But that didn't happen. With the combined reference to the city's emergency operation plan and the SOP manuals from both Public Works and Utilities, streets were cleared within a record 48 hours. Stop signs were temporarily installed at every intersection, and debris removal was underway. Having the resource material and a hard copy was a game changer. Without power, our computers were useless. As part of our emergency management plan, every vehicle had an SOP manual and a supply of forms. Employees were confident in the work they were performing, knowing the material was current and it provided clear instructions and policy. Having an SOP manual is important. Having a complete and current SOP manual is vital. How do you know when a procedure is necessary? In most cases, if there is a policy, then a procedure may also be needed. If the process to complete the work is lengthy, routine, complex, demands consistency in the work performed, involves documentation, and/or has serious consequences if not performed correctly, then guess what? A procedure is necessary. Consider a procedure as a tool in which to train your employees in the correct format of doing work assigned. Let's talk about the benefits of policies and procedures. Employees are provided with the necessary information that allows the freedom to perform their jobs and make smart decisions within defined boundaries. What are the expectations? The workforce, both within the agency and outside, is enabled to clearly understand individual and team responsibilities. The approach to take? Employees understand the constraint of their job without using a trial and error approach. Control by exception. Clearly written policies and procedures allow managers to exercise control by exception rather than micromanage their staff. Guidance is provided on how to properly handle issues and reduce errors. Adhering to policies and procedures can reduce the chances of mistakes and ensure consistency and professionalism. Agencies generally have the same set of objections to writing down a set of policies and procedures, all relating to the difficulty, organization, culture, and time restraints. But let's remember, the benefits outweigh the pain of policies and procedures. The purpose is so much greater than writing down some rules. Remember the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. The same can be said for creating policies and procedures. As we talk about what are some helpful hints for writing policies and procedures, consider this. Writing a policy or procedure may seem daunting, but if you follow a few simple tips, it will be as easy as verbally explaining a process to an employee. Use plain language in a consistent format. As much as you want to impress your coworkers with your eloquent writing skills, impress them instead by being thorough in details. Do not assume everybody knows what DEP is the acronym for. If you must use an acronym, be sure to include in your procedure the fully spelled out term, such as Department of Environmental Protection. Use action writing for procedures. Be sure to use present tense. The use of short sentences allow for specific details. Don't focus on the minute steps unless you feel it plays an important role in the process. Spell out the acronyms. Avoid use of jargon, slang, or overly technical words. Be factual. Stick to the facts when writing a policy or procedure. Well-written policies and procedures are typically solid, precise, factual, short, and to the point. Ask yourself, is there enough information to guide users in making good professional decisions? There are many templates available for use in creating policies and procedures. There is no template which is better than another. Your agency must determine which template works best for the information you are sharing with your employees. For the purpose of the self-assessment process to become accredited, key elements to include in any policy and procedure would be 1. The date. This would be the effective date. 2. Approval. Policies should be signed by either the agency director or organization management. You decide who is authorized to sign policies, and you decide if procedures need to be signed. 3. Review and revise date. Keeping in line with the reviewing of your policies and procedures within the required timeline, this information will provide tracking and history for reviews. and 4. Reviewed by will add to the tracking and indicate someone in a leadership role has confirmed the accuracy of the information contained in the document. After writing a procedure, consider the following. Writing a procedure is about providing training to someone unfamiliar with the task. Ask yourself after finishing creating the procedure if the steps outlined are in the correct order of the work being performed. Can equipment or tools referred to in the procedure be easily identified and located? Does the procedure identify if the task is intended for one person or will assistance be required? Don't get hung up on using words, phrases, abbreviations, or acronyms which require further explanation. The staff reading and learning from your procedure are focused on how to complete the job. They don't need to worry about trying to interpret additional information. And be sure to address any needs for collecting data or maintaining records. A procedure is supposed to help improve efficiencies. How efficient is it if you have collected data, but it is saved incorrectly, and you have to repeat the work a second time? There are some updates and changes for you to consider. Ask yourself when reviewing a policy or procedure to determine if revision is necessary. Is the policy or procedure written using the accepted format or template? Look at your existing documentation. Is it written in the current and accepted format? Did your agency create a template which should be used? Is the content up to date and comprehensive? Policies and procedures should contain up-to-date information. Be sure the direction you are providing to staff is current and understandable. Is the information presented in a logical and easily understood manner? Remember this, KISS. Keep it simple and straightforward. Create your policies and procedures in layman's terms. Be aware in getting caught up in the tendency to overthink the processes. Do all forms and illustrations contain the most current information? When you look at the forms and examples, are the documents complete? Forms should be filled out so as to serve as a guide. Are the policy and procedure statements true? Has the culture in your organization changed to the point where statements in a policy and procedure are no longer correct? Making sure these documents are current and true enables employees to clearly understand individual and team responsibilities, thus saving time and resources. As we come to the end of this session, remember, as you move through the self-assessment process and are preparing to apply for accreditation, your agency must meet the following criteria. All policies should be approved by the agency director or authorized management. This includes any policy generated by another department other than your own. This is crucial. All policies and procedures must be dated and show a review tracking date of at least every 3 years. For documents created and managed by another department that is not following the review timeline of either annual or a periodic review, then the applying agency must still review the policy or procedure to verify that it remains a current source of reference for staff. This review can be performed by providing a memo from the department director with the acknowledgement statement or add a review date and initials to the document. All procedures must be followed with proof of implementation. If the practice is asking for procedure on how to respond to emergency repairs or breakdowns, such as practice 18.9 in the Equipment and Fleet Maintenance chapter, then the procedure must be provided. If this procedure references a work order or call log, a copy of the work order or call log should be included. All forms used as supporting documentation should be provided in a filled-out format. Any personal information on employees may be redacted. At the end of the self-assessment review, your agency will be able to show a strategic plan with a focus on the specific goals of its operation, which also aligns with the organization's own strategic plan. The agency will have created a succession plan, establishing legacies for long-term employees and at the same time providing clear direction for staff in all positions. Finally, your agency will have a current and thorough standard of operations manual to show for all your efforts and to use as a training guide for new employees. This concludes our session on creating policies and procedures as it relates to your agency working through the self-assessment process.